At the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth says China's rapid military buildup is causing growing concern across the Pacific, while stressing Washington does not seek confrontation with Beijing. Trump meets with top aides at White House Situation Room to make final determination on extending truce with Iran, but reaches no decision. He reiterates that Iran must never obtain a nuclear weapon and calls for reopening of the Hormuz Strait. Head of Iran's Parliamentary National Security Commission, Ibrahim Azizi, says Tehran sets terms of negotiations with the U.S., insisting that concessions would only be exchanged on reciprocal basis, rejecting what he calls Trump's unrealistic demands. The U.S. judge rules that Kennedy Center was illegally renamed after Donald Trump and orders his name removed. The decision found that the center's board exceeded its authority, prompting Trump to say he would relinquish control of the arts venue. Zelensky warns that Russia is preparing a major new attack on Ukraine and urges citizens to stay vigilant and protect themselves. Warning follows one of the largest Russian bombardments of the war, which heavily struck Kiev last weekend. Canadian man Kenneth Law pleads guilty to 14 counts of aiding suicide for selling poison and providing suicide-related advice online to people in dozens of countries. Prosecutors say he will not face murder charges, saying murder conviction is unlikely. Three Mexican airlines imposed temporary level restrictions on passengers who recently visited Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, or South Sudan due to Ebola outbreak. Measures come ahead of World Cup, with restrictions set to remain in place for 60 days. A federal judge ordering Trump to respond to allegations surrounding a controversial IRS settlement tied to $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. The ruling adds new legal scrutiny as critics question the fund's legality and use of taxpayer money. The U.S. President Donald Trump has outlined conditions for a possible agreement with Iran, with the White House saying that Trump will only accept a deal that satisfies his red lines. In a lengthy post on Truth Social, Trump listed what a potential deal must include. First, Iran agreeing not to develop a nuclear weapon. Second, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Third, the removal of any sea mines and the lifting of U.S. blockade on Iran. And lastly, the removal and destruction of Iran's highly enriched uranium. Well, Trump added that other issues of far less importance have been agreed to, and he would be meeting in the Situation Room to take a final call on the Iran deal. But reports say Trump did not reach a decision after a 2-hour meeting in the White House Situation Room. Well, from the Iran inside, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghir has pushed back, saying that Iran, and I'm quoting, said goodbye to the language of must 47 years ago. Baghir added that both sides were exchanging messages, but no final agreement has been reached yet.
We said goodbye to the language of must 47 years ago. None of the Western parties, when speaking about the Islamic Republic of Iran, can use the language of must. We make our own decisions based on the interests and rights of the Iranian nation.
Now, when asked about the issue of nuclear weapons, Baghie made it clear that Iran is focused on ending the war at this stage, reiterating Iran's earlier stance of leaving contentious issues like its nuclear program out of an interim deal.
As I speak to you now, the exchange of messages is continuing, but an understanding has not been finalized. Regarding other points that have been mentioned, including the nuclear issue, I stress again that at this stage we are focused on ending the war. Therefore, we have nothing to say about the details of the nuclear issue at this stage.
Another pushback came from Ibrahim Azizi, head of the Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Commission. In a post on X, Azizi wrote, and I'm quoting, "Trump should understand Iran as the victor on the ground, sets the terms, cash for cash, credit for credit, nothing for nothing, and that applies only to issues actually under negotiation, not his fantasies." Separately, in a phone call with Qatar's Emir, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Iran was ready to achieve a dignified framework to end the war. Now, in Washington, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio hosted Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar for talks that were expected to include the latest developments in negotiations on ending the war. Meanwhile, in Tehran, thousands gathered in support of Iran's Supreme Leader Moshtaba Khamenei. The demonstrators slammed Trump's comments and voiced skepticism over a proposed plan to extend the ceasefire.
First of all, this is not just my view. The whole world is saying that he is a crazy, stupid person. He does not stand by his word. He is a complete liar and a low person, and he only talks nonsense. We don't pay attention to what he says, and we continue our own work.
Now, on ground, the situation continues to be tense. Reports in the Iranian media claim that an Israeli-U.S. micro-drone has been destroyed by Iran near Kashmir Island, and this comes a day after Iran claimed it destroyed an American aircraft near Bushehr province. And separately, the U.S. has issued new counterterrorism sanctions targeting individuals and entities in Iran. All right, to discuss more on this, we're now being joined by James A. Russell from Washington, D.C. He's an emeritus professor at the Naval Postgraduate School. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Always a pleasure talking to you. Now, let me just start by so of course, as of now, it seems like Trump had a Situation Room meeting, but it did not yield to anything, and there has been no extension of ceasefire in that case. Can this amount to an escalation?
Escalation is always a possibility in a circumstance like this. And I think what the preceding several days of news reporting about the outlines of a memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran, what this tells us is that Trump is having difficulty swallowing the deal, which has been laid at his feet, which makes clear that the United States has achieved absolutely nothing in the war. And so agreeing to, again, the terms of this agreement in which the discussions about the nuclear issue are pushed off into the future. The Iranians agreed to open the strait and remove the mines. The United States ends the blockade. And then the United States lifts sanctions on Iran to resume oil sales. Basically means that the circumstance is what it is, which is that the Iranians have the upper hand, which Trump has a great deal of difficulty in swallowing. So he's got to sort of man up, as it were, and acknowledge the fact that the United States and the Israelis have been engaged in this war for the last couple of months, and it's been a complete catastrophe. They've achieved nothing. None of their strategic objectives have been realized.
I was going to come to that because U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had explicitly stated that destroying Iran's ballistic missile program is a primary objective of the U.S. military operations. However, there is no mention of this in the post by Trump. How do you read into this?
Well, this is one of a couple of issues that figured into this broader framework, as it were grievances, list of grievances between the United States, Israel, and Iran, which included the ballistic missile program, which included Iran's support to its proxy forces. And of course, all of that is off the table, as it were, and it's obviously equally clear that the United States did not destroy Iran's ballistic missile program. It did not destroy its drone program. Iran retains significant military capabilities to continue threatening the United States and its Gulf allies, which again just comes back to this central point of, well, from the American perspective, from Trump's perspective, what exactly was accomplished here? And we get back again to this issue of nothing. None of the significant issues were resolved in ways that were favorable to American interests as they were defined by Trump.
Also, what we know from Trump's list is, of course, we know that what is the potential deal and what it should include. In this case, how do you see Israel assessing this list of the numbers, the 4 points that U.S. has mentioned, and what kind of role, according to you, would Israel be playing, if at all, it will be playing in this deal?
Well, yes. So again, this is a great question. And of course, according to press reports, the ceasefire, if and when the United States agrees to it, is said to include Lebanon. And that the Israelis have no intention of stopping the bombardment in Lebanon and the occupations. It's effectively the annexation of the southern part of Lebanon. So Israel, as it has no interest in any kind of agreement between the United States and Iran. And this has been a constant, of course, between the U.S. and Iran over the last 30 to 40 years, in which the Israelis have no interest in an American-Iranian rapprochement of any kind. And they will do everything in their power to undermine it and wreck the rapprochement. And I don't see Israeli behavior changing in any way, shape, or form. They will do what they can to undermine an American-Iranian agreement. And this, we also have to, and your viewers should understand this as well, that this particular issue is framed by pretty intense domestic political pressures in the United States, which are being brought to bear on Trump, not only by the Israeli government, but by the Israeli lobby in Washington, D.C. Trump is facing a lot of pressure from these groups who, of course, want the United States to continue the war. And you have this extraordinary kind of situation in which you have the neoconservative Republicans who are, like Ted Cruz as an example, essentially demanding that Trump continue this war indefinitely, which of course is the Israeli point of view. The Israelis would like the United States to continue this confrontation and keep Iran, for example, under blockade indefinitely. With the problem of that, of course, being is that the world economy crashes.
True.
We're in the midst of a global economic crash because of this, all to suit the Israelis.
Right.
And this is
true. I was going to come to the Strait of Hormuz, because that's another sticking point. And my last question, if we could briefly also, give us an insight about the Strait of Hormuz. Now, it is a leverage to Iran which did not exist before the war. Do you think Iran would want to negotiate on the strait after the attacks followed both the times in June and, of course, this year as well? Do you think that they should be, because in the end, now this is a Strait of Hormuz and they're trying to charge vessels. Do you think it's fair enough for Iran to actually consider negotiating with U.S. on the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, I think so. And I think, and again, at least if the press reports are to be believed, that Iran has agreed to a framework that would essentially allow shipping to resume without any kind of toll structure. However, there are caveats to this agreement, again, at least according to the outlines of the memorandum of agreement, and that is that Iran gets to start re-exporting its oil through the Strait, and that the United States, in conjunction with this, starts to ease up on sanctions and the frozen assets, billions of dollars in frozen assets, which the United States has, which is on hold, so to speak.
Right.
So I think, again, the Iranians are very savvy negotiators, as they've always been, and that they see the Strait of Hormuz as a vehicle for them to achieve other kinds of important objectives, which again would allow them to start resuming oil exports to their important customers in Asia, and to have the United States unfreeze assets. And the sort of part of all this is the deja vu part of this this was all part of the Obama administration's Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action from many years ago. And so here again, the Trump finds itself having to basically go back to the circumstance as it existed, which they claimed was unacceptable when they came into office.
Right.
So, but the short answer is that absolutely, I think the Iranians will make every use of this influence / control over the Strait to get other things that benefit them. With the, again, hanging in the background, the idea that if the shooting starts again, as it very well could, because as you've seen over the last several months, President Trump is very erratic and unpredictable, and I'm not sure how he could be a reliable and credible negotiator for any party. And the Iranians know all this, and they could decide to close the Strait again if things go south.
Professor. Absolutely, Professor. I do hear your points there, and of course we'll have to again wait and see if at all we have any kind of deal there, and hoping for a positive outcome. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us and giving your insights. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me.
And while tensions continue to remain high across West Asia despite renewed diplomatic engagement, as Israeli and Lebanese military officials met for security talks in Washington, Israeli forces pushed deeper into southern Lebanon. In Gaza, Hamas called Netanyahu's 70% expansion order a violation of October 2025 truce agreement, while UN said Gaza should be 100% for Palestinians. Israeli forces have pushed deeper into southern Lebanon, crossing the strategic Litani River and entering the village of Dibin under heavy shelling. Troops also engaged Hezbollah fighters in intense battles in the villages of Yahmar and Zafar al-Shaqi near Nabathie, an area that has emerged as a key flashpoint in the conflict. The Israeli military issued fresh evacuation warnings across southern Lebanon, forcing hundreds of residents to flee north.
From here, the battle against Hezbollah in the north is being managed, and I must tell you that there are very impressive results here. Our forces have crossed the Litani. They have moved up to the commanding terrain.
Military delegations from Israel and Lebanon met at the Pentagon on Friday in what U.S. officials described as productive talks. According to Pentagon Deputy Secretary Elbridge Colby, the military-to-military discussions are expected to support a broader diplomatic process led by the U.S. State Department in the coming days. Now, he made no mention of the truce to halt fighting between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, stressing that Hezbollah must halt its attacks to enable de-escalation. Now, Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon Tyre district killed at least 11 people on Friday. According to Lebanon's health ministry, among the dead was a rescue worker. Officials also reported 8 injuries and accused Israel of violating humanitarian law. Residents say the ongoing bombardment has left families living in fear.
The strikes that happened here were really, really intense for us. Of course, you're affected by the sounds, and I have my grandchildren who get scared, so I hold them.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, Hamas has accused Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu of violating the October ceasefire agreement after he announced plans to expand Israeli control over the parts of the Gaza Strip. United Nations also reiterated that Gaza should remain fully under Palestinian control.
100% of Gaza should be for the Palestinian people, right? That's what we want to see. And we've been calling on Israel to pull back from its occupation, from the so-called Yellow Line, and that will continue to be our position.
All right, moving on. Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval held talks with his Myanmar counterpart, Tin Aung San, on the sidelines of the inaugural International Security Forum in Moscow. And officials say the two security chiefs reviewed bilateral cooperation in security, defense, connectivity, and other areas of mutual interest. And they also exchanged views on recent regional developments. Now, the meeting comes as India and Myanmar seek to deepen ties despite Myanmar's internal security challenges. Now, in shifting geopolitical dynamics in the Indo-Pacific, Myanmar NSA is also scheduled to visit India in July for the 5th BIMSTEC National Security Advisors meeting, underlining the importance of both sides attached to the regional grouping. The Moscow meeting sets the stage for Myanmar's president's high-profile visit to India from May 30th to June 3rd. Myanmar President Min Aung Hlaing has accompanied by a high-level delegation to cabinet ministers. Senior officials and business leaders will hold formal talks with Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi on June 1st. Now, the visit marks the first foreign trip by the president in his current capacity. The Indian government said the talks were expected to focus on strengthening the historical and civilizational ties between the two neighbors. A dedicated business forum will also be held during the visit. Now, connectivity projects, including the Kaladan multimodal transport project, connecting India's Kolkata to Mizoram and northeast through Myanmar, are also expected to be parts of the talks. Trade, counterterrorism, cooperation along the northeast border are also likely to dominate the bilateral agenda. On 30th of May, the Myanmar president will travel to Bodh Gaya in Bihar, considered one of the holiest sites by the Buddhists. He will head to Mumbai on 2nd of June for business engagements and site visits with Indian industry leaders. Now, global oil markets saw a sharp reversal in sentiment this week. Brent crude is heading for its biggest weekly decline in 2 months, falling nearly 10%. However, the impact of the Iran conflict continues to ripple through global energy flows. Japan's crude oil imports collapsed by 66% year-on-year to 850,000 barrels per day, the lowest monthly import volume recorded since 1967. At the same time, the U.S. has tightened sanctions on Iran's oil trade, adding 8 tankers and 15 commercial entities linked to Hong Kong and the UAE to its sanctions list. Meanwhile, South Korea is ramping up LNG purchases. The country is preparing for an intense heat wave expected to last several weeks. At least 6 LNG cargoes have already been redirected towards South Korean ports, with utilities trying to avoid power shortages during peak summer demand. In Brazil, oil exports are expected to fall by nearly 50% year-on-year in May after the government imposed a 12% export tax earlier this year. Preliminary data suggests shipments have slowed to around 1.6 million barrels per day. Now, shipping costs are also climbing globally. The Baltic Exchange's dry bulk freight index has surged to its highest level since December 2023. Despite hours of a turnaround in the Gulf, the weekly damage continues to pile up. Well, that's all in this broadcast of World DNA. News and updates will follow on the other side. We leave you with some images which are drawing attention from across the world. Stay tuned. You're watching WION The World.
WION asks what matters. The question the world wanted answered.
We're having a lot of racist comments coming from the United States against Indian Americans. So this would against the basic provides of India-US relationship. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm sure that there are people that have made comments online and other places because every country in the world has stupid people. I'm sure there are stupid people here. There are stupid people in the United States that make dumb comments.
One question, one exchange, global reactions. When WION asks, the world follows. Get the WION edge.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
On Inside South Asia this week, a deadly bomb attack near a railway station in Quetta. How Pakistan has lost its grip in Balochistan. Rising energy prices and sharp export declines. We take you to the highlands of Sri Lanka, where tea workers are hit hard by the Iran war.
Thank you so much. This is already...
And a win at Cannes Film Festival that's historic in many ways for Nepal. Watch all this and much more with me, Kripa, on Inside South Asia.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter. Because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world. A 360-degree analysis